and thank you for joining us for Snapshots of the Quality of Life Initiative. Welcome to those joining us on Zoom and those who are watching us on Facebook Live. The purpose of today's chat is to share where we've been and where we're going with the Quality of Life Initiative at a very high level. Through our registration, we heard that some of you who are joining us today are tuning in and meeting us for the first time. And others have been here with us for the past few years and are just joining us for an update. However, you are showing up today, you are very welcome, and we really appreciate you being here. My name's Haley, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Jen and Catherine. And as we welcome you, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge those who steward this land. I'm currently hosting you from Shabuktuk, meaning the Great Harbor in Mi'kmaq, what's also currently known as Halifax, Nova Scotia. We're gathering for this conversation then in the traditional and current home of the Mi'kmaq. Here in Mi'kma'ki, the peace and friendship treaties are foundational to our relationship and the way we live here on this land. And we are all treaty people. Also, this month and every month, I would like to recognize and express gratitude for the legacy of people of African descent who have been in Nova Scotia for over 400 years. Black history matters, Black lives matter, and Black futures matter, especially as we work collectively for a Nova Scotia that is more vibrant, inclusive, and a resilient place for all. So who are we and who is engaged Nova Scotia? We are a small nonprofit who sits at the intersection of the public, private, and community and academic sectors. Over the years, our work has spanned from the tip of Cape Breton down to the South Shore. It is looked to support municipal public engagement, or maybe facilitating the One Cape Breton Unama'ki Summit, to one of our current initiatives, From Me to You, which is a simple note writing campaign looking to encourage connection across our province. Today, we're here to talk to you about the Quality of Life Initiative, which Engage has been facilitating over the past few years. Because we only have 30 minutes today, there's going to be no formal question and answer period. But if you have specific questions, please still put them in the chat or in the Q&A with your contact info, and we're going to make sure to follow up with you. We do, however, encourage you to use that chat function throughout today to share reflections or reactions to what we're sharing with you. And we're actually going to ask you, if you're joining us, to turn your attention towards that chat function right now. As all good, engaging presentations, we have an opening question for you. So whether you want to put it on Facebook Live chat or now, we're asking you to tell us in a few words, what does quality of life mean to you? So I'm going to pause for a few moments. Great. Now, this seems like a simple question, but it's such an important one. And we've been asking people this question across this province for years now. And it's always so wonderful to see the diversity of responses. We also know that lately asking this question looks a little bit different because of the pandemic that we're in and the wider context. That said, we feel like right now when we ask this question, what does quality of life mean to you? We're sitting amongst an experience where a lot of people are asking this more often, and there's a lot of space to ask, what matters most? And there's also a lot of space to recognize where society needs to act at some of those root issues that are festering, such as the social inequalities that folks are experiencing and have been exacerbated during the global pandemic. So we feel quite fortunate to be sitting in this space where we're asking folks and convening conversations about what matters most. Now, we believe this work is quite important, and I'm excited to pass it over to Jen to tell you more about the Quality of Life Initiative.
Thanks so much, Haley. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. It's exciting to see we've got 20 people on attendance in the Zoom and also some joining on the Facebook Live. So thank you so much for joining us. So I'm going to go into a little bit about the background of the initiative. And because I'm sure some of you who are new to what we are doing here, the Quality of Life Initiative is really looking at things that impact our well-being in our daily lives. So traditionally, much of the information that we've used to make decisions that affect our lives have been on economic data. And so those data points aren't necessarily wrong, but we like to think that they're a little bit incomplete and they don't tell the full picture of Nova Scotians. So at Engage, we're deeply interested in questions about how Nova Scotians are doing beyond that GDP. And the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Initiative is looking at what an economy could look like if we focused on improving the lives of Nova Scotians. And this is where the partnership with the Canadian Index of Wellbeing comes in. So the CIW is focusing on understanding how well-being can provide Canadians with a fuller picture of what real life looks like for real people. So this brings us back to 2017 when this all kind of started. So Engage was hosting workshops and having conversations and sessions with community members across the province. And it really turned into questions about how do we measure this, how do we measure quality of life, how do we measure well-being? And this kind of led into the 2018 Nova Scotia Quality of Life Index. So the index was done in collaboration with the Canadian Index of Wellbeing, and it was released as Nova Scotia's first quality of life index, which offered a high-level overview of how Nova Scotians are doing by identifying trends across a series of well-being indicators. And then eventually this led to the 2019. This was probably the biggest push with the work that Engage has been doing, where the survey, the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Survey, was released across the province. So this research again was done in partnership with Canadian Index of Wellbeing, and outreach to communities was made possible with partnerships with NSCCs across the province and also the local leadership teams. Haley will go into a little bit more detail about how incredible these local leadership teams are, but they are basically groups of community leaders and community members across the province who really helped get this out to all the different regions of the province, and were really a big part of what made this survey possible. So a little bit about the survey. It was 230 questions, so it was a relatively long survey, and it went to 1 in 5 households across the province. That was what 80,000 surveys were distributed between April and July in 2019. With a special emphasis was really placed on reaching communities that are often underrepresented in surveys of this nature. And there was also a big push to get this to as many regions as possible and really get that wide understanding of Nova Scotia as a whole. So as you can see, the map kind of shows how strong strong a representation we had across the province. And we had quite a few responses, 12,827 pre-COVID, which makes us the largest quality of life data set in North America. And of course, we have the 9 local leadership teams that were really a large part of making this happen. And yeah, as I said, the 230 individual questions that were in the survey were laid out under 8 domains. So these domains touch on things like education, environment, community vitality, living standards. So these are the 8 domains of well-being. So when we think of quality of life, we're really interested in these kind of questions. So questions about healthy populations, questions about time use, questions about leisure and culture. And these are questions that typically aren't asked. We haven't seen, I mean, I know I haven't seen many or filled out many surveys that have looked at, you know, how the environment is doing in relation to healthy populations. So it's very interesting to see a survey of this kind, especially in Nova Scotia. And so with that, we've been really trying to reach out to as many people as possible with the results that have come out in March. So in March 2020, our executive summary was released of the results. And since then, we have been able to host over 30 presentations and sessions, reaching over 500 people throughout all the presentations. So really those presentations kind of got started in June and have really been ramping up over the fall, which has been really great to see so many people and really get to connect with as many people across the province as possible. And so we've been seeing, we've had 10 formal analysis produced from this data set and 9 data sharing agreements signed. And we've noticed that a lot of the people who are using or who have got these formal analysis or are interested in the data have been using it with their colleagues, with their staff, using it to add to funding applications, program development, personal research. And we have a page on our website that explains a little bit more about how to go through this process. And Catherine is going to go into a bit more detail about what all that looks like.
Thanks, Jen. I have successfully unmuted. So as you can see from that slide from Jen, we've been really busy bringing results to Nova Scotians and sharing more about where we've been at in terms of the Quality of Life initiative. And the 3 parts to that are reaching people across the province, revealing what's possible with the data, in other words, how people can use it, and ensuring it's available and accessible for Nova Scotians. With respect to reaching Nova Scotians, we have and are continuing to meet, speak with, and present to all kinds of audiences, including some of those identified here. So like nonprofit organizations, municipal leaders, and researchers at institutions and universities across the province. And this is a part of that. So the snapshots of the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Initiative are 5 days, 30-minute opportunities for us to tell you about where we've been and where we're going and what's happening right now, as John and Haley have pointed to. And so thank you so much for starting your day off with us. It happens to be Random Acts of Kindness Day, and I'm so glad to know that you're starting this Wednesday off with us. In addition to reaching Nova Scotians, we're also revealing what's possible. So that's basically asking, what can we learn from what Nova Scotians have told us? And this graphic, it isn't meant to overwhelm, but rather its intention is to paint some broad strokes and also some more finite strokes in terms of what can we learn from what has been asked. And that top bar across the slide is sharing the kinds of personal and shared characteristics. So you can be thinking about where somebody lives, how old they are, their income, and how long they've lived in Canada, for example. And then we're thinking about the ways that these intersect with the 8 domains. So community vitality, leisure and culture, time use, and then we have another layer below that. So those more finite brushstrokes are speaking to some of the indicators that are actually in the survey and can be explored through the summary results and otherwise. So for example, there's sense of belonging to community, which is nested underneath community vitality. There's access to libraries, which is nested under leisure and culture. And there's a question of whether or not we feel we have enough time for sleep, socializing, getting our creative juices flowing, and spending time outdoors, which is nested under time use. So when we're looking at this slide, it's meant to spark some curiosity. For example, we might be interested in the way that single people spend their time who live in the Strait area, Western Cape Breton, which for the last few years, that's drawing from from personal friends and my experience. Or you might be interested in learning what folks living in Cape Breton and Cumberland perceive as the environment around them. And so this next slide is zooming in to one of those domains. So if we're looking at leisure and culture, there's this question of facility use in Nova Scotia related to recreation and cultural facilities. So we can see that local parks, playgrounds, trails, beaches, outdoor swimming pools, and public libraries were used by the most number of people in 2019, which might not come as a surprise to anybody. And then curling rinks were used by the least. So that might be surprising to some of my friends and might mean we could all start a new sport if we wanted to. And this is another layer. So it's another layer, but it's also another perspective. So if we're looking at public library use in Nova Scotia, that third most used facility from the last slide, we can also look at it in terms of other regions of the province. So in that last slide, it's an example of being able to look at recreation and facility use relative to one another. And in this instance, it's an opportunity to look at it from a regional perspective. And almost 6 in 10 Nova Scotians used a public library in 2019, and library use was highest in HRM. So how do you access results like I just showed you? Well, the first thing to note is that the summary results from the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Survey are available to download from our website and ready to use. And so these results are expressed as tables, and they reflect the responses to the 230 questions for 10 regions across the province, like with that library use slide, but also the province overall. And so rather than seeing it in that graph form, if you're downloading the summary results, you'd be looking at them in a table format. And if you did respond to the survey, I really think that it would be neat to go to our website and download those summary results if you haven't already. Some of the other ways to think about accessing the results is an incoming supplementary analysis slide deck, which illustrates responses to the 8 domains in a graph form. So those summary results, as I said, are in table format, and these supplementary ones, you'd be able to see them in graphs. And it also illustrates a supplementary analysis that the CIW undertook related to areas of focus that include social isolation, poverty, experience of discrimination, trust, health, and a sense of community. In addition to what we're putting out there, we are building in-house capacity to do analysis for others. And so you saw on that sort of wrap-up slide that Jen was speaking to, that we're receiving requests from all kinds of organizations in terms of what analysis they would like us to do. And so those are from organizations and otherwise who don't necessarily have the in-house capacity themselves to do the analysis. And when we enter into a data sharing agreement with a larger institution, organization, and municipality, it's enabling them to access the results and data that they need to do the analysis that is of interest to them. And there are also some research projects underway, including work by us related to a feminist economic recovery funded by the Atlantic Council for International Cooperation, and researchers at the University of Waterloo who are undertaking some research about the experience of isolation of older Nova Scotians. And so that would come about whenever a data sharing agreement is signed, and then researchers and other institutions can take on the research that is important to the communities that they are working with and surveying. And so with all of that talk about what's possible and accessing the results, and we've been speaking a lot about this survey, it's important to remember that the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Initiative, while it involved a measurement exercise, it isn't one in and of itself. We see the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Initiative as a change initiative. So it is about the survey, and that's very important. And now it's about what we do with what we can learn from those survey results. And part of that is what our shared work can lead to. So these are some really cute Lego building blocks, and they're just 4 examples of what we can do together as a province in our own work and in our own lives. And so the initiative is pointing us towards developing a common language around well-being and quality of life. It can also help share insights in terms of who's experiencing different levels of life satisfaction and how people's quality of life differs across the province for Nova Scotians. And it's also enabling us to make decisions that are based on our fuller and more robust understandings of quality of life. We have those 8 domains and 230 indicators. So there's a lot there in terms of what's intersecting and what's meaningful to each of us. And in a more general way, it's really helpful in terms of priorities and plans that make change, because this is a change initiative. And since we're resurveying in 24, it also enables us to measure the progress that we've made later. And so I also just like to think about how, these are just 4 building blocks, but that we each have our own building blocks and things that we're working towards related to quality of life for our communities. Thank you. And I'll pass it back to Jen.
Thanks, Catherine. So what's on the horizon? We are looking forward to announcing, I guess this is the announcement. In a few months, or a month or so, we'll be hosting the meetup, which is conversations about quality of life in Nova Scotia. So a lot of our shared work, this is kind of an example of sharing all the things that we've been learning throughout this survey and throughout our work. And we really want to bring all of you and anyone who can join into a 6-week online experience to dig into quality of life and well-being. So we'll be bringing all of this data and to life with thoughtful conversations and ideation sessions, which we're calling our jam sessions. So we'll have 6 weeks, and we're going to be the beginning of the week. We'll have a conversation panelists that we will all be listening to, and then later on in that week, we'll be going through this ideation session. We'll be looking at the data and thinking about that panelist conversation that we heard earlier that week, and meeting new people and talking about all the potential things that can happen with thinking about a quality of life lens in Nova Scotia. So the weekly themes, so like I said, we'll have 6 weeks. The first week will kind of be in a bit of an introduction week. We'll be thinking about 6 W's of the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Initiative. So you can see we've got the blue circles for the panelist days and the orange circles for those jam session ideation days. And then that second week, we will be looking at the data and thinking about conversations and people who are in work of trust and participation. And that third week, we'll be looking at time and our time and well-being, and then people, relationships in place, discrimination, and impacts of income. So a wide variety of topics that we'll be looking at, and you're welcome to come to some or come to any. It's going to be really kind of drop in if you want to just listen to one of the blue chair chats, we're calling those blue circle times, or if you want to just join an ideation session. We're really just opening up the opportunity to have as many people come and engage in conversations with us about quality of life.
Thanks so much, Jen. I know I'm really excited for the meetup. Data crunching is fun, but being in conversation with people about quality of life and well-being and our collective quality of life across the province is a joy of my work. And another joy is working with the local leadership teams. As Jen mentioned earlier, they were absolutely instrumental in the success of the survey portion, and they continue to be absolutely instrumental in terms of our future strategies of what's on the horizon. These LLTs worked really hard to make sure that there was enough people who answered surveys locally to have regional data sets, because we know that regional information informs regional decision making, and it's so important to bring those folks directly into the conversation. They also paid extra attention to creating pathways for participation to reach out to folks who are historically underrepresented in data. And we want to continue to do that. From radio stations to booths at the local farmers market, huge shout out to the LLT network. You are awesome. And in terms of our strategy right now and working with these LLTs, it's to bring the results out to people but also to bring more folks into the conversation about what matters to them. So right now, what this diagram on the left of our slide here represents is a bit of our strategy of our public engagement strategy. So many LLTs right now are looking to hold, stakeholder conversations and then bring in the wider public into those conversations here in the spring. So keep an eye out for how the LLTs are coordinating regionally. So this is really just the beginning. I think unique to how traditional reporting is done, the survey results really was just the start of what's possible for the Quality of Life Initiative. This is a many years, many people project. And I want to express extra gratitude for some of the folks who you see here on the slide. And this is just one slide capture of all of our supporters and partners in the Quality of Life Initiative. If you're interested in getting involved as an individual or maybe as an organization, please reach out to us and let us know, and we'd be happy to put your logo amongst the many across the province. Now, from what we've learned in the results, like Catherine shared, to the conversations we're currently having and will continue to have with people from across the province, to the collective experience we're having right now in the global pandemic or this past year. We know that there is something really special about living in Nova Scotia. And we also know that while that's true for some, it's not true for all. And we believe that seeing and understanding those gaps is the first step to doing something about them together. So if you want to have your next questions answered, please reach out to me or Catherine or Jen. We're so happy that you joined us this morning for this half an hour, just a snapshot of what we've been up to. And we look forward to continuing to get you involved in the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Initiative. So have a great day. Enjoy your Wednesday, and bye for now.